Well, Milo, great to have you here today. Heard a lot about your story and excited to hear about it. Why don't you just tell us about who you are and kind of your journey and dive right into it?
Yeah, where to start?
Yeah.
My
childhood.
My childhood. Yeah. My full name is Milorad,
Mm-hmm.
and people know me as Milo.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, I was born and raised in Southern California, specifically in Tustin, California. And
where's that from? LA?
That is, it's depending on the time of day. It's on a good day with no traffic, it's about 35 minutes south of LA, just on the 5 or the 405.
Okay.
But it's literally the first city next to Irvine, and I sort of grew up there in a time when when Orange County was literally just full of just groves of orange trees.
Oh wow!
And throughout time, it's just. Like my mom usually just says, she's like, it's just, like mushrooms. They're just apartment buildings popping up. It's a great place to live. And, as people from here sort of know about Irvine, it's just sort of the Silicon Valley of the South. There's Silicon Valley, and then there's just the southern point, which is Irvine. So we're right next to Irvine. And I'm a first generation kid to an immigrant family from the country of Yugoslavia, specifically Serbia, as it's known today, and things that country is sort of known for. Well, I would say just for sports. We've got the MVP basketball player Nikola Jokic for the Denver Nuggets.
Okay, so he's from there.
He's from Serbia. I think the most winningest tennis player there's ever been, Novak Djokovic. He's from Serbia.
Okay.
Serbia's won different Olympiads in volleyball, just just they're always been sort of at the top as far as basketball goes, and some great soccer players have come, but I was just sort of growing up in Southern California with Vlade Divac, sort of coming from Serbia to LA. I just sort of got started playing basketball, and this. Having been born in the 80s, my family had immigrated to the States as a result of they were coming from a socialist country.
Yeah.
And people, I think a lot of people, especially in this area, they've come from backgrounds where there is, they do come from these authoritarian countries, and whether it's socialist and usually in a lot of these regimes, Tony, they don't know what the future is going to hold, because these people, when they grasp power, it's theirs. And that was sort of the deal with Josip Broz, who dominated that region since 1955. And right before he died, I think people just sort of saw the writing on the wall and just realized, hey, this economy, the politics, everything is sort of tied to this one man.
So then you guys fled here.
My parents fled here.
Yeah.
And pretty soon after that, I was born.
Yeah.
And sure enough, a couple of years after that, it's already passed by when war broke out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sort of like the Iraq, there were different ethnic groups of people in this country, and one thing that was sort of holding them together, in Iraq, it was fear, right? But one thing that was sort of holding Yugoslavia together was, that they sort of eliminated religion.
Really?
Why? Just because, Yugoslavia was comprised of Croatia, Roman Catholic. There was Bosnia, which is, they were Muslim. There were the Serbs, the Montenegrins, and again, there are different parts of that region which were Christian Orthodox, which is what I am.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think my point is just different ethnic backgrounds, same mentality, same language.
Mm-hmm.
But, for example, my Christmas is 2 weeks later.
Right.
We follow the old calendar.
Yeah.
And then it's just when there was a Serbian president, it was sort of like, well, we want to sort of, the Croats were saying, hey, well, we want to celebrate and not to work on December 25th.
Right.
And there were always these little differences. Like for example, Serbs, we use Cyrillic, like the Russian kind of writing, whereas everyone else uses Latin. So differences in that way, but really, growing up as a kid in Southern California, you're in this bubble.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea like what's going on in the world. People are at war. Like, you're sort of in this bubble where life is really, really sort of simple. And when war broke out, what was on TV every day, all day was literally the news, and just hearing about, well, what's CNN saying, like what's really happening
but
over
you're
there.
still disconnected from that.
Disconnected.
Yeah.
And as a kid, we had no idea what was going on. And there was a short break in the middle of the 90s when I went, and I just remembered I went out there, and I just remember that like one ice cream was like 100,000 Serbian dinars.
100,000? What did that translate to in dollars?
Well, good question. It depended on the time of day.
Yeah.
It depended on the time of day. People were getting paid at different times of day. And what they would do is they would take this currency, they'd go change it to, German marks, Deutsche marks, just because that would hold value. And my point is, like, as a kid, I just didn't, first of all, like, what war is, but you don't know what it is until, you're sort of exposed to seeing buildings blown up.
So you'd be going down the street getting ice cream and you see a building get blown up.
I didn't see it because I went during a short time of peace between the Balkan War and then the bombings of Yugoslavia, which sort of happened later. But, I went there as a kid, and as a kid, I didn't want to give 100,000 of anything for some ice cream.
Yeah.
For me, the rubber hit the road the very moment when, like, I remember one summer I came in with, I must have been like the first person in the country to have like Nike Air Max shoes on. I was like 10.
10 years old.
10 years old.
Nike Air Max in a war-torn country.
Yeah, and there were these two
kids
people.
eyeing you?
Well, there were these three guys. Two of them, they grabbed my arms, holding my arms, and the third guy just hit me in the stomach. And he just took my shoes.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, like, I was so angry. It's like, who would take shoes?
Yeah.
Used shoes. But, then I also realized, like, at the age of 10, I was pretty tall. Those shoes probably would have fit somebody, some older teenager. But, like, I just didn't understand what was going on. And, as I grew older, I started watching movies from those times. And many of them I would sort of have to watch in different segments. It was just so dark, the things that people revert to, in times of inflation.
It's all about survival.
And protecting your family and at the expense of others, and people were just doing what they had to do. And as I started to get more and more into swimming, which is sort of in the middle of the 90s, I was pretty good.
Yeah.
And
how'd you get into swimming?
Sort of like how a lot of kids get into anything. Just flying into California, you'll just from the airplane, you'll see a lot of pools. Just if you look down, you're going to see a lot of pools. Back then everybody was either a surfer, they were a surfer, a boogie boarder, or like you were a surfer, a skater. And if you were a skater, it's between like a blader and a skater. And just, people like to identify with something. And, for a lot of us, we were either swimmers or water polo players. And, my best friend at the time was a swimmer. So I got into it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, like, I just enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. But, as I sort of started to get pretty good and 5 years into it, I knew that I had something, because I was already looking at trying to make the Olympic Games at the age of 15, 16.
15 years old, Olympic Games.
So I went to the Olympics.
And it's not Junior Olympics. This is
this is the real deal.
Real deal.
And for me, being this first generation immigrant in California and going to the Olympic Games, and this was in Sydney, Australia. I just remembered, putting on like the Yugoslav, sweats, because it was still Yugoslavia at that point.
So you're training here, representing Yugoslavia.
Training here, representing Yugoslavia.
Wow. And
I show up over there, and all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I'm met with people that were giving me looks that I've never seen in my life. I didn't know what it was. And and on their sweats, it said Croatia. And there was Bosnia. And I knew that we spoke the same language, but I was just this kid that just literally came in, this quasi, beach bum kind of kid, from California that sort of just showed up at this international competition where the world congregated. And for the first time in my life, I was forced to share a bus or to share a space with people that literally looked at me in ways that made me feel uncomfortable. And, as a kid, you don't know what hate is until you're faced with it.
So they just grew up hating you without even...
It's not that they grew up hating me or my people. It was a result of war. They lost people. We lost people. My uncles, they were lucky enough not to have been on the front lines, but to have been the truck drivers that were dropping whatever it is that they needed, whether it was water, artillery, whatever. But everyone lost somebody. And, again, as a kid, I grew up sort of being, blocked off from all of that because I had no idea what this was.
Yeah. Because you're left and...
My parents left.
Yeah.
I mean, they again, like I said, they saw the writing on the wall. People that saw the writing on the wall, who was courageous enough to leave, they left. Yeah. So I was at this pool and I had my Serbian coach that sort of was responsible for me. And he's like, look, this is sort of the deal. Like, everyone's uncomfortable, even they are, but just understand, like, hey, like, just if you create some space, everything's all good. Just go do your thing. So, for me, like, from very, very early on, like, knowing that who I was, or I'll rephrase that, like, who I was I was an American, but what I was is Serbian. You look at my name, Milorad.
Right.
I mean, from a very early age, like, I adopted the name Michael. People knew me as Mike just because I was bullied. I was the kid with a different name. And again, like, you realize, like, this was the 80s. It was a little bit different back in the 80s.
This was America.
It was America. And, and I'm not complaining, but it was just sort of like I was a kid that, didn't look white. People didn't know what to quite make of me because I was always really, really tan, but they just sort of knew that I had a different name. And, my parents have done they did a really great job of sort of integrating me and just sort of acclimating me to American life and, sort of giving me this American name just so that I would adjust to, just adjust socially a little bit better. And, through war and all this, like, you sort of start realizing, like, okay, like, I need to make sure that, like, I'm with my tribe. Just so that, like, I feel safe. Right. Just because, and
which is kind of how gangs are formed, if you think about it.
Right? It's exactly how it is. Yeah. You gangs, sort of like you hear the stories about prison. Yeah. There's the Latinos there's the African Americans, there's, like, the Aryan race. And even if you're not a racist, like, you better join them if you want protection. Yeah. Right. And I've never been in that, I've never been in that situation, but, like, you can sort of understand it. And I understood, like, okay, like, I'm Serbian. That's what I am. But despite being, Serbian, like, who I was I saw the lens through the world of an American. Hey, that's wrong. Yeah. It's like, hey, like, why? Like, like, I struggled with that for the better part of my life. It's just like, hey, like, people, they're American when it's convenient. Yeah. And
that Canadian passport when you're traveling.
Yeah. Like, you're, like, whatever it is, like, like, people, they sort of identify to whatever's convenient at the moment. And, so growing up, I sort of just, I was trying to make sense of my reality and, just to this world, having grown up here, but represented and been a part of this tribe that, has been through so much and realistically on the world stage, like, Serbia is not a popular country.
Really?
Novak Djokovic, he's sort of maybe he's sort of maybe the best example of this world champion, the best tennis player there's ever been. Nobody's got more Grand Slams than this guy. But, he does have a different dynamic and, a different lobby behind him and who's protecting him. And that's sort of been in the back of my mind throughout my whole life. It's just like, hey, like, they're like Cavic, like if you ever doped, like nobody want to protect you. I'm like, dope, like, what are you talking about? Why would I need protection? It's like, and having that been in the back of my mind, I would get drug tested as an athlete, like most athletes do, random and in competition. And they would ask you, it's like, hey, like, if you want, you can also offer blood. It's like, well, do I need to? They're like, you don't need to. It's like, well, just take my blood.
Yeah.
And because I knew that, that I represented a country that wasn't so popular, that if I ever did anything noteworthy, people would say, you know what, he's cheating.
Yeah.
So you know what I did? I took my blood test, took all my results, and then put it on my website.
Yeah.
Every single time I got it, boom, it's right there.
Right.
Like,
and that's before each race.
And this is before races, and when we didn't need to get tested, but we would get visited randomly, as you should, just because cheaters going to cheat.
Yeah.
And I made it a point to sort of put it out there and just let people know, like, if you want to know if I got some kind of STD or if I got some other whatever, it's right there, buddy. Right there. It's right there. And I felt that I needed to be better, as a result of just sort of representing this small country and this tribe of people. It's just, and for the longest time, and by the way, there are bad people on all sides of every war.
Yeah.
But I felt like I needed to go the extra mile to sort of represent our people as best as possible. And, and I see Djokovic doing that. The guy's got a spot on his resume, like he's never done anything wrong, and again, it's just.
And it goes back to that highly scrutinized, just from where you're from.
Where I'm from Tustin, California.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It's just like, who's your tribe?
Yeah.
And I think still to this day, it matters. You always revert when things are getting crazy, like the world is crazy right now. We hold under a tribe, and I look at what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, and in Israel and the Gaza. Like I got clients that are from both sides. Like literally in both wars, I got clients from both sides, and I just tell them, it's like, I don't know what you're going through.
Yeah.
But I remember what I went through.
Right.
And what that was like.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell the kids, it's like, look, this is something you cannot control.
Mm-hmm. All
you can do is just focus on what you do your best at school, be with, just have fun doing whatever it is that you do, and just, let the world figure it out. Let the world figure it out. Everything's going to be okay. It's just, I just know what that felt like, sort of just knowing that somebody could be lost overnight. You just get a call like, hey, like so-and-so died.
Yeah.
This is the reality. And, so, when you're asking like, where did I come from? I came from a place, I think I came from the best place in the world, Southern California.
Yeah.
And because it's such a great place for life, you did sort of talk about gangs, and there was a lot of gangs there. I sort of came from that. I came from that generation where raves were big, man. Everyone was dropping E, like everyone was going to raves. Everyone is sort of everyone is sort of going to those kinds of parties. And I just remembered that, like, if it wasn't for sports, I might have fallen in with some of that.
And how did you stay in that on the sports path, right? Because you found you made it a goal to be in the Olympics at a young age. How did you stay on that path when all the gang stuff was going around?
We didn't know any better.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, what do you like doing? It's like, I like swimming. For other people, like, hey, what do you like doing? It's like, whatever it is that you're into, just sort of like, just go with that. And so many movies out there, just, boxing, for example, just some kids that are in trouble. It's just like, there's this one coach at some gym. It's just like, they just see a troubled kid. And it's like, hey man, like, you look like you can move, you look like you can fight. Come to the gym. I want to show you a couple things.
Yeah.
And really,
did you have that? Did you have a coach that inspired you? And
I had a coach that, that did believe that I had something, and at the end of the day, I always just sort of thought, like, just, surround yourself with people that, that are sort of like-minded, that like what you like. Because, when you're with people that like what you like, passion feeds passion. It's like, you're hanging out and you guys are having a good time. It's like, yeah, we were getting our teeth kicked in.
Right.
But like, we sort of live for those moments between exercises where somebody would tell a joke and we're just having some fun. And it's just, it was probably what kept me out of trouble, just because the truth is, a lot of people that I grew up with, they did go to jail. Growing up in Irvine, California, like today, the demographic is completely different. My brother was inducted into the High School Hall of Fame for basketball. And it's been almost 20 years out of school. And I just remembered, like, going to that game and just noticing that there was not one player on our high school team that was over 6 feet tall. When back in our day, like, we had a couple of dudes that were 6'8". So the demographic in very many ways changed. Irvine, California, Tustin, that area, it's it's a different demographic, very, very IT. Things have changed. And when I sort of look at that, I stop and think, like, my goodness, like, a lot of kids growing up in my time out there were gang fights at school not every week, but like, every 2 or 3 weeks there were.
Yeah.
The walls have gotten taller at school.
Yeah.
And you sort of realize, like, it's so expensive to live there that if one didn't go out and do something that was making a lot of money, like, if they wanted to stay there, and when you grew up somewhere, like, you want to stay there. That's where your people are, that's where your favorite places are. Like, a lot of them started dealing. And sooner or later you're going to get rolled. And that's just what happened. So I, in saying that I grew up in the best place in the world, like, it is the most beautiful place, but it's got its issues, drugs, like, where there's money, there's drugs, where there's money, it's materialistic culture. And I thought, like, this wonderful place, like, maybe it's not the best place for a kid to grow up. So, I left California and I went to UC Berkeley.
Okay.
For school. And
you swam for that team.
I swam for that team.
Okay.
And I wasn't smart enough to go to Cal. I was good enough as an athlete, and to go somewhere like that, like, you got to be really, really, really good at something, whether it's academics or sports. And I just happened to be, really great at sports. And because you're good enough, I was definitely helped in getting in. My coach.
So you had tutors and.
Well, when you're
student
there,
aides.
When you're there, whether it's MIT or Harvard, I mean, they'll all tell you, like, once you get in, you're gonna graduate. They're gonna give you everything you need to graduate from the tutors, whatever. Like, you're gonna pass. Yeah. But the hardest thing is sort of getting in. And and once I was in, like, I graduated with a 3.2, like. Like, I was a 3.7 in high school, like, but given like 25 to 30 hours of training per week, and then going to class, and then, just trying to figure things out and study, like, I thought he did all right.
Yeah.
But, like, in going there, like, I made it a point to, I wasn't smart enough to get into the, the econ degree. So, like, I wanted to study politics, because growing up, I didn't understand. I wanted to understand my situation. Like, what was this war really about? Right. What's this tension really about? And couldn't study politics because, Pop was like, there's no future in this unless, and I'm glad that I didn't, because,
so what would you study?
I studied political economics,
Okay.
and I wanted to be a diplomat because that was my thing. It's just like, hey, like I'm
Like,
good
why
at
are you
connecting
doing
with
it?
people.
Yeah.
It's like I don't care where you're from. Like you and I are gonna be friends if you want,
Yeah.
and we're gonna help each other if you want. And I dreamed for many years about being a diplomat, and I studied this, and along the way I studied what the war was really,
Yeah.
what was this really about, and at the end of the day, like everything you realize it's all economics.
Mhm.
That's all it really was. Culture, difference of cultures and backgrounds, they are big, but at the end of the day, it's the distribution of wealth.
Yeah.
So, I was lucky enough to go to Cal. It was one of the best experiences of my life, and I'd do it again, but it was hard. I would have had a better college experience had I gone somewhere else. I would have had a little more fun, but
Right.
going to Cal, the idea is it's like, hey, if you go to school there, then doors are going to open up for you in life, and sure enough, they did. It's just you know close to 20 years out of that, like I'm
Yeah.
realizing like I did nothing with that degree.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't
'Cause you're
useful.
still involved with swimming.
Yeah. Like, it took me a really, really long time to sort of discover like, hey, find what you love
Mhm.
and find a way to sort of make a business of it.
Yeah.
And I did that. But sort of the journey of being an athlete and being a pro
Mhm.
all up until 28, you sort of started to realize like, this swimming thing isn't forever. And the year after I won silver,
So which Olympics did you participate in? So you did Sydney.
yeah.
Which other ones?
So at the age of 16, I went to Sydney.
Okay.
And for me, Sydney was just sort of an opportunity to break that ice and just sort of see what this is about. And, and racing against, the world record holder, which is my idol, Michael Klim, this Australian guy.
Yeah.
And his world record was a 51.81. And for the longest time, that was my pin at my ATM.
Uh-huh.
It's just like, that's how, like, that's, every
Hope you
single,
changed it.
everyone like, go ahead and try. Right? No, but it was 51.81 for a long time, just because I thought to myself, like, oh gosh, like I lived and breathed this because I was a fanatic. And, at the age of 20, I was already in college. I went to the Athens Games in 2004.
Okay. Nice. How'd you do there?
I expected that I would win the bronze.
Mhm.
And I think overall that was sort of the expectation of me, because I set a world record the year before at the age of 19.
Oh wow.
And when you set a world record, you're sort of on the map now.
Well, yeah, you're a target now.
People know, like they sort of know what you're capable of. And the thing about setting world record, Tony, is for athletes, when you dream about, or at least I dreamed about pushing what was humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, a world record, it was sort of to take the title of not only where you're at, but to push sort of the limits of mankind and what we've been able to achieve all up until now. And just to be able to say, like, I'm the greatest there's ever been.
Wow.
The greatest there's ever been. It's kind of a cool title.
Yeah.
And
now, was that something in training that you had a clock and you're like, you're there with your coach and you're like, keep trying. And then you didn't make it happen until the race. Is that how that went down? Or you had to
visualization is just it's been my most powerful tool throughout my career. The ability to see something happen before it's happened.
Yeah.
And and the great thing about visualization, or at least for me, is like every single time you watch this movie in your mind, and mind you, when you visualize something, you're the director of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you see this happen in your mind, I just remembered finishing that visualization or that simulation of what I wanted to have happen. And then as the director, I would say, you know what, that could have been better. this could have been better. The next time I would do it, I would visualize and I'd correct just that one piece. And it was just thousands and thousands of simulations in my mind throughout many years that sort of led up to this, it sort of came to this moment where in 2003, unexpected, I flew to Ireland. And in Dublin, in the December of 2003, I competed in this race in the 100 butterfly in Dublin, and I just remembered, that like I went through the qualification round. I was first. The semifinal round, again I was first, and I was ahead of the then world record holder. And going into the final, I just remembered I wrote on a piece of paper the time that I was going to go, and I folded it, and I just went over to my coach right before the race, and I said, "Open this at the end of the race." And he kept it in his pocket, and I did the race, and he just opened it up, and it just said WR, world record. So like in swimming, what we do is every single round is supposed to be. It's supposed to, like, you go into the qualification, which is round one, and you do what you're going to do. You always want to leave just a little bit reserved. You don't want to show your cards, but you know what happened in round two, which is the semifinals. You want to make it just a little bit better, but again, you want to sort of hold your cards back. And you sort of, you run this simulation in your mind many times. You know what you did in the race, and then sort of like you just bring it together. It's just when your mind, your visions, and what happened moments before sort of come together and be like, all right, this is what's missing. And for me, like I've grown up, my philosophical hero has always been Stephen Prefontaine. He said every race is a work of art, which, again, the emotions that people feel when they look at your work of art, it's infinite. It's whatever you can feel. And I always, in my visions, I always just sort of would always finish my race and just hear this combination of just cheers and groans, and and I'm on the podium, and I just remembered, just being on this podium for the first time, just knowing that I was on top of the world and I'd be hearing, the national anthem for the first time, and very, very emotional, just sort of, reaching this goal that you've dreamed about so many times. But then there's this dark side of this too. Sort of this astronaut syndrome. A lot of astronauts, once they've gone to outer space, what they do with them is they put them in the control center. They never go back to space. They never go back to the moon.
Why is that?
I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, but really what for me, like I just thought, like, there can be nothing better than this. And it's just like, well, it's the Olympic gold, but it's just like, yeah, but the Olympic gold is not pushing mankind, just because, you could win the gold and be the champion then, but like next year, the world record is it's sort of different. And what happens is, a lot when you achieve your goal, for a lot of people, when they have this huge vision and it happens, they stop dreaming it. And the rational thing to do is you reset your goals, make that bar higher. And for a lot of people, it's just like, well, yeah, that makes total sense, but
it took a lot to get to.
It took a lot to get there.
To get to that goal. And then if you raise it again, you're like, shit, I got to do this again.
Shit is exactly right. I got to do this again. But you're already in it. It's just like, well, I need to make what I believe is perfect. I got to make it more perfect.
Yeah.
And now you got everyone coming after you. And I definitely felt the gravity of what that meant, years later, after my race with Phelps in 2008, which was my third Olympic Games.
How'd you do in that one?
I took home the silver. And
how far away were you from the gold?
And that's just it. That race is the most talked about Olympic race in the history,
really,
of the Olympic Games.
What happened?
Talking big, I'm talking big picture.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was I went to that final.
Is it online, by the way?
It is online. All you got to do is Google Milorad Cavic 2008 100 butterfly final.
This one?
And that is the final. That's correct. So I'm right there in the white cap in the middle.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
Serbia.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right next to Phelps.
And you know, as funny as this is 2008 and it's not full HD for whatever reason, but in any way, you know, there it is. And my goodness, I was 24 years old.
Uh-huh.
And you know, and
so that's you in the white cap.
That's
right?
me in the white cap and that bodysuit, and finishing that race. You know, I was leading the race, and it appeared that I was leading.
Mm-hmm.
And going into the finishes, you'll find out when you watch the race. You know, I went to the finish, and it appeared that I was reaching first, that I was first.
Uh-huh.
And Phelps was literally right there, and it appeared that I touched the wall first, but I took second.
So the video shows that you took first.
It shows that I was there first, but that I got second. And I was 100th of a second behind Phelps. And what happened was about 72 hours after, right? There it is. I was there first. And what the explanation was that I didn't apply the 7.5 pounds of force to activate the pad before he did. And
so that's an activated pad?
It is, just because other than that, like, you know, technically if a wave was ahead of us, a wave could hit the pad and activate the pad. So, you know, whereas in track and field, you know, in horse races, you know, it's the head that crosses the line, and that's sort of what stops it.
Yep.
Well, in swimming, somebody's got to stop it, and you know, it's your hand.
Really? So,
you know, one of the most difficult things about this whole thing for me was that, you know, that the timing system, they were the official sponsor of Michael Phelps.
Mm.
And it took them a couple of days to come up with an explanation, which you already knew it was going to go their way because, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, they wrote the rules.
They wrote the rules, and they have a vested interest.
Books, right?
They got a vested interest in this race. And, you know, and of course, after something like this happens, you know, you sort of come away with a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, swimmers, and I think anybody at a very high level, we all sort of become philosophers, you know, trying to make sense of
what
this.
happened.
And
like, what did you do wrong?
And I think it was Michael Johnson that said, you know, like a lifetime of training for 10 seconds in track and field. It's just like, that sounds so sad. You know, it's just like, you train your whole life for a 10-second race. Well, similar to swimming, like,
how long was
it's the most, that race for me was 50.59 seconds.
50.59 seconds.
Yeah. For Phelps, 50.58 seconds. And
then you have to grapple the rest of your life with what happened.
And there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not asked about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it lives permanently on YouTube.
And I'm famous for that race. And I'm famous for, you know, another race, which also happened that year where, you know, I wore a political shirt.
Oh yeah. Which race was this?
And 6 months before that race, I was swimming in 2008, I was swimming the 50 butterfly at the European Championships in Eindhoven. And there it is. Like, if you look it up, I was going into this race, and what happened was I knew I was going to win it.
Yeah.
And right about that time, a very, very, very important region of Serbia, it's called Kosovo. It was given away. Mm-hmm. It was literally just taken from us and just given away to the people that were inhabiting that region of Kosovo.
So like squatters.
I'm not going to use that phrase.
Okay.
No, but it's just, you know, basically, this is where the origins of Serbia's history begins. Mm. This is the most important region. And because there was a growing number of ethnic Albanian people living there. I mean, we can go back as far as the 70s when it was, 9 out of every 10 people were ethnic Serbs in that region.
Mm-hmm.
And Josip Broz, the former leader,
Yeah.
I'll call him a leader of the region. He was open on, he invited everybody. And one great thing about his leadership was he invited everybody into the country.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever wanted to live in this great country, they were invited. And slowly with time, that ratio had changed from 9 out of 10 being ethnic Serbs to 9 out of 10 being ethnic Albanians. And of course, they wanted to celebrate and, celebrate their own cultural differences. They wanted to make their regional language, Shqiptar, which is their language.
Mm-hmm.
And, that dynamic changed, and all of a sudden, they wanted political power. And, these are all normal things. I mean, whatever it is that you are, like you want who you are and what you represent and your family represents, you sort of want that.
So they
celebrated.
wanted their own place because
they wanted political power.
Yeah.
And what?
Because they might have been pushed out from somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what would they be doing in Serbia?
Yeah. Look, they made it their home.
Yeah.
They want their values represented, and I think these are very normal things. Mm-hmm. It's just like, hey, like
they want to be taken care of.
If not just taken care of, they don't want to get discriminated against. They don't want, like, you sort of, from a human side of things, you sort of you just get it. Mm-hmm. Well, in any case, there was tension, and because Albania, the country of Albania, is an active member of NATO.
Yeah.
They were protecting their people in that region, and of course NATO came in, and with NATO is. NATO is sort of comprised of a lot of different European countries, but also the United States. So it was during that time when in 2008 when that region was literally just stripped from us. And having just graduated from Cal.
Yeah.
Perfect. It was perfect. Yeah. It was perfect.
You were meant for this.
I was born for this. Yeah. I knew I was going to win the race, and weeks before that competition, like I had that shirt made, and what it said on the shirt was Kosovo is Serbia. And basically, I won the race, and and I had this shirt on, and and in receiving this medal, I knew that the whole world would watch me receive this medal, and that I would get the attention. And literally, that very night, like I was told that I'd be excluded from all further competition at that meet, and that I had 24 hours to leave the country, which is the Netherlands.
That's crazy.
Security purposes. So
yeah. Did you have like a police escort?
I didn't have a police escort, but because of that shirt, I required police protection, mm-hmm. In the future. And, guys, like I say this to everyone out there today that's sort of pursuing their activist ambitions. It's like, you got to believe in something. I respect that.
Yeah.
You have to believe in something. But if you're going to believe in something, be prepared to pay the price.
Yeah.
And that's something that people don't look for. There were 2 times in my life where my life was threatened.
Really? Even living out here?
Not here.
But like when you traveled?
When I traveled.
So people were keeping tabs on you?
People were keeping tabs on me. And
for that shirt.
For this shirt.
Wow.
And they're extremists on both sides. And it's whatever, if you got an opinion today.
Yeah.
You better go into the paint with that one if you're going to make it, and again, more than ever. And more than ever with social media, it's just like, well, whatever it is that you do, if you make your opinion known, people are going to Google you. Mm-hmm. So if you got a thought, if you got an opinion, you better believe in it and just live with the consequences, because you will.
Take the because
If you want to get a job tomorrow, there's somebody in that HR office or at that company that doesn't quite see things as you see it.
Yeah.
But I respect their need to believe in something and to want to support or protect the little guy or protect your people. Right? Like, you know, and for me, no matter what, having grown up like me being the guy with the weird name, me being the guy that looked a little bit different than everyone else.
Yeah.
I was always different. I represent my people. I love my people. I love who they are. I love the culture. I love the language. I love, you know, I love everything about it. And, you know, for me to wear that shirt growing up and just being educated on the history of Serbia and why we're great and where it all began, like I put that shirt on and this is who I am and this is what I represent.
Right.
But I also became the man. I became the leader. Maybe not the leader of that movement, but I became the face of it.
Yeah.
Kosovo is Serbia. And there have been times where I feared for my life, as I just mentioned. And the reason why, as I got older, I thought more and more, well, why did they have me leave the country within 24 hours? For me, I thought, like, you know what, it's politics. Tony has nothing to do with politics. It had everything to do with the safety of everybody on that pool deck.
Because somebody could have just like...
Even in the Netherlands, there was somebody who didn't see things as I saw them.
Right.
And if there wasn't somebody who saw that there were extremists,
then that whole pool would have gotten blown.
That could go over there. And because it's a swim pool, they don't have metal detectors at swimming pools.
Yeah.
They don't pat people down. Anybody could have easily gone in there with a firearm or worse.
Yeah.
So they needed me to leave. And in leaving, years later, I look at it and they ask, like, well, do you regret doing it? It's like, I don't regret doing it. But knowing what I know and being the older person that I am and being a father.
Yeah, you put a lot of people in danger.
I'm putting a lot of people in danger. I'm putting a lot of children in danger. These are grown adults.
Yeah.
I would not have done that today knowing what I know today, just because all those people, all my colleagues, all my friends, and even the ones that didn't like me, they didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
There is no place for politics in sports.
And you saw that a lot during the pandemic.
And you saw that a lot during the pandemic.
Yep.
And you see that now more than ever with Russia being banned. You know, my Russian friends, they have nothing to do with any of the politics other than just being who they are. They were just born. They were just born where they were born. And these people that have literally given their lives to the pursuit of this beautiful art, like I said earlier, a lifetime of training for 10 seconds. That is all it's literally just wiped off the ground, just powder on the table, just blown, it's gone because of the political climate. Israeli athletes, same deal.
Yep.
Just like these people, like they, you know, I'm not going to speak for or against any one side, because it's anybody who's given just a little bit of thought and did a little bit of research, they have to objectively admit it's complicated. But there are people that have literally given their lives to the pursuit of this sport. And they love their families. They love their friends. They even love other people on the other side of this. But guess what? We're at war now.
Yeah.
We can't be talking to each other. And one of my greatest stories and one of my greatest sort of realizations is that love of your sport or love of anything, that one thing is what bonds people.
Sport
so for example,
bonding.
it is. So I mean, you know, when did Serbs and Croats for me sort of start hanging out and start, like, you know, breaking that ice and the tension, which is war? Because even in 2004, 4 years after my first Olympic Games, where I was faced with fear of hate, it was then that we were literally sitting on the bus. And if you've ever been to Athens, Greece, and I highly recommend you go to Athens someday, but if you've ever been there, the traffic, it's ridiculous.
It's like worse than I-5.
Oh, yeah. It's a side joke. You know, in California, they call the 405 for a reason. Yeah. And they got the 405 here, but not in California. call it the 405 because you might be there for 4 or 5 hours. But being stuck on a bus with people on the other side, what essentially that they understand what you're saying. It's the same language, slightly different dialect, same language, and beautifully same mentality. So if you're bored and you're sitting on a bus, eventually you're gonna if you're a guy, you're gonna sort of come to these questions like, what would you rather? Or like if you got to choose between two evils or whatever, and you come to these jokes, and I just remembered whether it was one of my teammates or one of theirs, they would tell a joke, and we would just start snickering, or they would start snickering, and we'd be telling jokes. And people would start laughing. Mm-hmm. And with time, maybe not at that same Olympics, but at future competitions, somebody would just throw down just some nasty time where they'd win something. And you'd get on the bus and they're sitting in the front rows, and like you'd walk by them, you'd nod them. You just nod like, I saw that.
Yeah.
Right? I respect that. You don't need to like the guy. I mean, the honest thing is like it's difficult to not like him because you don't know him. Mm-hmm. But he loves what you love, and he just did something that you respect. You're going to nod at him.
Yeah.
Nods turn into fist bumps. Fist bumps turn into like, hey, how you doing? That was awesome. How you feeling?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, man, so where are you from? And it turned into, the bus is full. There's one spot. It's like, you mind if I sit next to you? And, it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, it literally took being stuck on a bus to realize how much we actually had in common.
Yeah.
We weren't different. Your name, although similar to mine, it was a little bit different. It might be Roman Catholic, but there are so many similarities, just in mentality, humor, language, what you like, what you don't like, music.
Yeah.
But really what bonded us was sports.
Big shout out and a huge thank you to Zekin for making this happen. They have an amazing platform. Check out their website, zekin.com, zeacon.com.
So, I always just sort of say like, if, just sort of like, putting people into like a community center together. It's just like, hey man, like sooner or later, you guys are going to play ball together.
Right.
Sooner or later, you're going to have one less player. You're going to need one extra player. It's like, well, yo man, you're sitting over there, you're not doing anything. It's like, what, you want to play? And it's just like,
and it breaks the ice.
It breaks the ice. Yeah. And sports has been it's just a journey. And now that I'm older and now that I lost my hair, I sort of look back.
I held on for longer than I should have.
Look, but like, you sort of realize like, sports, we start off doing sports because it's fun.
Yeah.
Why does any kid do anything? And you look at the two extremes, a baby and a retiree, like, with a young child, you're like, hey, you want to go do this? They're like, yeah. It's like, you want to go do that? Yeah. Because they're looking for the potential of having fun and everything. Mm-hmm. Whereas the extreme, the other extreme, which is the other side of the spectrum, let's just say somebody who's seen it all, done it all, maybe a retiree. Mm-hmm. You want to go do this? Like, it's raining outside.
Yeah.
It's like, it's too hot.
Right.
This is going to happen. You, as with time and experience, you start finding reasons to not do something because you know better. Mm-hmm. And I just think that, throughout time, like, we just sort of have to look for, let's just look for reasons how and why we can have fun as opposed to like why we shouldn't do something. And if you just sort of put people in one space together, it's just like, hey, like, let's just do what we like to do.
Yeah. And
while we're doing what we like to do, I promise you, we're going to look at each other. Thanks. That was a great pass. I'm going to pass you the ball.
Yeah.
That was a great pass. Right. This is like a great shot.
You start to respect the person.
You start to respect the person.
Yeah.
Because they enjoy what you enjoy. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's love. you sort of throw rationale out the window. It's like
because growing up, you're supposed to, with what the media tells you and everything, you're supposed to hate this person. You don't even know the person you're supposed to hate.
It's what the media is telling you.
Yeah.
It's what your tribe is telling you. And, I just can't help but believe in putting people in situations where dialogues are important.
Mm-hmm.
And again, talking politics, but, Dartmouth, there are two professors, one of, Israeli studies and the other of, Middle Eastern studies. And these are two professors, one from both sides. They got together at Dartmouth and they started this group where they're sort of talking about the differences. They're trying to find this middle ground instead of people literally going to war at each other, on school campuses. I mean, I just don't know how kids do it nowadays. Going to school and it's just, you're going to find people of Jewish faith. You're going to find people that follow, Islam. That's what makes America beautiful. Yeah. My parents, they left the dangers of what Yugoslavia was going to become. People, they leave, they escape.
And they come to America.
They come to America for this, just so that we can just live with each other.
Yeah.
And for me, again, as a kid, going back to, what it's like to be a kid, like everything, you're doing it because it's fun. And then when it starts getting a little more serious, when I was in college, I was already, world record holder. It's like, I got to defend this. Mm-hmm. If I don't do this, I'm not going to get paid. If I don't get paid, I can't keep going because swimming's that small of a sport. Mm-hmm. And when you make a job of what you love, you start having less fun.
Mm-hmm. Because you got to do bills, marketing, all these things
that are just on me. I didn't want to be a role model. I mean, That's not who I was. Like, I just want to, let me just do my thing.
Yeah. But then people look up to you because of what you've done.
People look up to you for the level of mastery.
Yeah.
And it wasn't
tap into that mastery.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I jokingly say until I lost my hair when I became when I became an adult, but especially when I became a father, that I realized that wow, all of that, it wasn't about winning. Like, people need to put their kids in sports or activities that they enjoy, not because it builds character. It teaches you lessons about life.
Yeah.
And it isn't until you have perspective, when it's all said and done, that you understand it. Another great story is the president of Serbia once told me, I was 24 years old. He's like, "Hey, Milo, you gotta have kids." And I had a pretty good relationship with the guy.
Yeah.
And I was 24, and I said, "Mr. President, I'm 24. He's like, "You gotta have kids." I'm like, "That's terrible advice."
At 24 years
old. At 24 years old, he's like, "You don't even need to stay with the mother. Like, what's important is that you have kids."
Just plan them out there
and
find somebody.
And before he was president, he was a psychologist, and I'm like, you know what? All right, whatever. Like, I'm not gonna have kids yet.
You didn't offer up any.
Yeah, it's just like, could you imagine somebody just going like, "President told me not kids.
This is my niece.
Yeah,
I have a kid with her."
my president told me that it's my duty.
Yeah,
it's like, but it wasn't until I became a father that I actually understood what he was actually telling me. And what he was telling me was, it had nothing to do with having kids. He wasn't telling me to have kids. Mm-hmm. The act of having a baby. Mm-hmm. What he was essentially telling me with this, what he was essentially telling me was, the very moment when you become responsible over something else, whether it's over another life, mm-hmm. which is a baby, whether it is for your own company, mm-hmm. which you have employees, or in his case, whether it is becoming the president and the leader of that country and the destiny and the future of your people. Mm-hmm. It isn't until you become responsible for another or something bigger than yourself that you evolve. And I had no idea what he was telling me until I became a father. And all of a sudden, I started to notice small things in my life where I was cutting out people or activities or habits that I knew weren't serving me. I started fine-tuning my life in such a way, working harder unconsciously. Mm-hmm. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to.
Because you have somebody that's helpless that needs your care.
That's exactly right.
And that's essentially what, if you think about a president, right? They're trying to help the helpless. If they have a good heart.
If they have a good heart.
Yeah.
The reality is this, every politician's got blood on their hands. None of them are clean.
Yeah.
But regardless, everyone always started in that path with good intentions. Mm-hmm. And the intentions are, hey, we want to make sure that at the end of my time, I'm going to leave the country, or I'm going to leave this company, or when I leave this earth, the world will be better. Mm-hmm. My son will be ready for life. And essentially that is what the president was telling me, and I never understood it. But again, this could only be delivered from somebody with perspective. Mm-hmm. And for me, having grown up, and growing up as a child of an immigrant who had come from a country that was that had no foundation, that had no foundations for a future. I grew up in a household where my father literally told me, Milo, do whatever you got to do for you. Mm-hmm. Survive. All right. No one, you don't have friends out there. It's you. Mm-hmm. It's you and this family, no one else. And essentially, whether it was the right or the wrong thing to say to me, I definitely grew up, and I grew up in a household where it was, we were always sharpening our teeth, always just going for it, because that's what we needed to survive. That's what he needed to do, and his mother did for him growing up mm-hmm. in a socialist system. Whereas if you didn't fight, you weren't going to survive. Oh. That was his upbringing. He gave me that he passed on that philosophy to me. And I'll tell you, if I was successful, it was because of the lessons that he had given to me, mm-hmm. but it wasn't without a price. When I set my first world record, people were slapping him, over the shoulder, congratulating him. And he just looked at him very, very cold. And he said, I know what I paid for
to get here,
to get him there.
Yeah.
Of course he achieved what he achieved. I paid for the lessons. Mm-hmm. I got into practice. I set the standard. Mm-hmm. For me, there was, if I didn't succeed as a 12-year-old, I wouldn't eat dinner that night. Wow. When I didn't make the Olympic final in 2004, and I was favored to win one of the medals. Mm-hmm. I had a suit malfunction in my race in the semifinals, and what I should have easily advanced to the finals, but I didn't.
Wow.
And because I didn't, my father didn't speak to me for 4 months. The disappointment.
Mm-hmm. Because he had to go through so much to get you there.
Whether he had to go through so much, it was just disappointment that I didn't execute. I had the opportunity and you blew it. So growing up, I had this mentality where I didn't celebrate anything. I really didn't celebrate a whole lot of races until I didn't celebrate races until, that world record, that first world record is just sort of like, this, if something ever so great has happened to you, what happens is you get this feeling in the back of your head and it literally elicits this response. It was bigger than me. Mm-hmm. But my nickname was Iceman in Serbia. Mm-hmm. People called me the Iceman because I was too cold. Nothing was good enough. but that was what was given to me. That was what I was taught. Nothing is good enough. Always go next. What's next? What's next? And that's all that I knew. So, in not celebrating anything, you're not sort of stopping to sort of, you're not stopping to sort of smell the roses.
And also just be thankful for that opportunity, right? Because, you're Christian, right? So it's like you can't be given more if you're not appreciative of what's already been given to you.
I wasn't appreciative. I wasn't.
Or maybe you didn't know how to be.
It wasn't within my coding. Like I sort of liken it to, I was given my operating system.
Yeah.
And my operating system had limitations to what it could and could not do. That ability to be grateful or to stop and to notice, like, okay, where am I?
Like, this is amazing.
I didn't have that line of code where it allowed for me to sort of live in the present. And how that sort of manifested itself throughout my life was, I was very depressed. Like, especially after the career is over, it's like nothing's going to be that big, that astronaut syndrome. Like, I'm never going to go back to the moon.
Nobody's cheering for you, and the lights, the attention.
A lot of athletes get in, they get into drugs, alcohol.
How did you navigate that first 2 years out of no competition, nothing, out of the limelight? How did you grapple with that?
It was just sort of, it's a period of sort of, it's a period of, when I finished competition, it was literally a period of redefining who I was and who I wanted to be. And, you sort of go in one direction. It's like,
and everybody just looks at you. You're the swimmer. You're the Olympic swimmer. That's it.
That's your identity.
Yeah.
They don't let you move on.
No possibility to learn anything.
Yeah. But, and while you're trying to redefine who you are and what your life is like and who you want to be or what you want to try, because it wasn't in my line of code to sort of, stop and be present and to be grateful, thankful, that it was very, very hard for me to sort of move on with my life and to just, sort of tap my, just sort of just recognize, like, hey man, like, that was good that you did that. Like, like I wasn't able to do that. And, of course, many years have gone by and I've sort of had time to reevaluate, like, whether this was a good force or a bad force, bad thing in my life. What I did realize was, it's more important to be happy. It's more important to be thankful. And like, I did have a lot of utility in having that mindset that, like, next, be an Iceman. It's really, really useful. But at some point, like, it's also very, very destructive to your life, your relationships, even business down the road. And that's sort of been one of my things, like, today, like, whatever good happens, whether it's for myself, for my family, my friends, my clients, I fist pump.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, that is literally my license plate. That's how much I believe in it. Fist pump.
So you have the kids going after swim. Boom.
I literally have them do that. And again, many of my clients, they come from families that grew up in places that also did not celebrate the small things. And I try to teach them. It's like, you went your best time. It wasn't the time you wanted, but it was your best time. You better celebrate that.
Yeah.
At the end of every little good thing, celebrate it. My one of my coaches, he always smoked a cigar. With every good thing that happened in every competition, he would smoke a cigar. And what he sort of made that about is like, I'm doing this to sort of acknowledge that something good happened. Because if I don't acknowledge it, then God will be angry. It's like, well, take God out of the equation, whatever. Like, if you don't acknowledge it, then you're not letting yourself have that satisfaction, knowing, like, hey, like, I leveled up. I was deserving of it. I see it. Now that I see it and I embrace it, I'm going to build on it.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, right? Is you celebrate it and you say, okay, how much further can I go?
I think for anyone to build off of anything, you have to sort of be present with, where am I?
Mm-hmm.
What is my foundation? Where are the holes in my foundation? I'm going to make sure that foundation is strong before I can move up. And again, the great thing about the mentality of next is, you're not letting the naysayers or the people that don't believe in you, you're not letting them sort of hold you down. You're not letting yourself be happy with where you're at. Like, you're always pushing forward. But it's sort of like a Jenga game.
Yeah.
Like, the higher it gets, the more wobbly it gets. Right. And I very much do believe that was sort of, that's sort of the situation with most athletes. Because if you're not 110,
mm-hmm.
if you're not 110 in the last game, you've lost. And I always tell my athletes, it's like, what's the extra 10% over 100%? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, it's like, well, what is it? It's like, good attitude. I'm like, very, very much so. You got to have the buy-in. It's not just give 100% of yourself, but you got to give your emotion. You got to believe. You got to go into something and be like, this is what I'm doing. This is what's going to happen. Now, the reality might look a little bit different. But going into to race against the greatest of all time, which is Michael Phelps,
mm-hmm.
you cannot allow for the thought to enter to enter that mindset that you could lose.
Yeah.
Is it possible? It's completely possible. Is it likely? It's very likely. But if you go in to any battle or any challenge with thinking about the possibilities of you losing or
mm-hmm.
not succeeding, it's already going to happen. So whether it's building a business or doing whatever it is in life, like, just keep going a little bit, just
mm-hmm.
keep pushing, but always be conscious of where you're at, what the foundation is, and find the people that you can sort of rely on to make sure that, like, hey, like, they're going to be your cheerleaders.
Yeah.
They're going to be the ones that are going to blow wind into your sails to go in that right direction, because we all need someone like that. And again, a lot of my clients, they're young kids with parents that grew up in places where, it's all performance. It's like,
mm-hmm.
look, I understand. I get it.
You've been there.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Not only have I been there, but I'm the Iceman.
Yeah.
Why do you think they call me Iceman? It's like, why? Because you're icy. I'm like, I was cold.
Mm-hmm.
Very cold. But again, if you're not 110, what does 110 mean? That means that you're ready to sacrifice relationships, things, people, whatever it takes. And that's who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of utility in it. But again, there's
a flip side to it.
There's a flip side to it. And again, I always used to say that free will is a gift with a price tag. Be ready to pay whatever it is that you're willing to choose. You got to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Every choice has a price. Every choice has a price. And if you want to be the greatest in the world, the best there's ever been, the price is steep. And I was ready to pay it. And I did. Had back surgery. Told I would never be able to race again.
When was this?
This was literally the year. This was in 2010. And, in 2008, after the Olympics, because we're all philosophers,
mm-hmm.
I had to sort of, like Jordan, I had to tell myself stories. And one thing that really resonated with me was this, writer named Oscar Wilde.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of him.
Wonderful, wonderful writer. He's a drunk. A lot of drunks, very philosophical people. But, he said that, that there are two tragedies in life. One tragedy is getting what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And the other tragedy is not getting what you want. And then they think, well, why would getting what you want be a tragedy? It's like, well, when you get what you want, Tony, what happens is you lose the dream. And that's sort of what happened to me in 2004. It took me years to get that dream back. It took me 3 years to get that dream back.
You'd won, taken away from you.
The world record happened in 03. And it took me 3 or 4 years to get back on that horse mentally and emotionally, just so that I can get in and, I could get back on that horse and have that fire, because that fire inside you, that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
That fire is what gets you up, gets you fighting. And, again, like as a high performing athlete, like it's 100.
Mm-hmm.
And I say 110.
Yeah.
And again, by not getting what I wanted, which is the other side of that tragedy, the gift of not getting what you want is you got the fire.
Yeah.
And I had the fire going into 2009. And because I was being watched, because I was literally the guy next to Phelps.
Yeah.
We were the most watched race in swimming.
Wow.
Swimming elevated worldwide. It was a solid percentage because of that race, the interest. But having NBC literally following you around, you feel the gravity. You feel the gravity of them following you from your hotel room. They shouldn't even be in the hall. They're there. They got another dude, another crew, like literally just below, at the elevator at the ground floor. They're following you.
Wow.
They see you get in your cab. They got another team at the venue watching you get out of the cab. And there's this gravity, this thickness of air, just knowing like, holy cow, this is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The whole world is watching. And I never forget what one of my other heroes in swimming told me,
Mm-hmm.
which the night before the Olympics, Peter Van Hugenband from the Netherlands,
Mm-hmm.
2-time Olympic champion. He caught me once and he told me, he caught me in the dining hall once and he's like, "Hey man, I know what you're thinking about." I'm like, "The race?" He's like, "Yeah, you're thinking about the race." He's like, "But don't forget why you're here." And I'm like, "I don't know, to win."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No. You're here because once upon a time, you had a lot of fun doing it."
Yeah. It's true of any sport.
That's true of anything that you like to do.
Yeah.
Anything. You started doing it because it was fun. You kept going because you were succeeding doing what you had, what you liked doing, and it was fun. And you kept coming back even through the ups and downs because you remember that fun.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "You're here because you had a lot of fun a lot of times.
And you're racing with the best.
And know that everybody in the crowd, they want to be you. And that we're all really excited to watch this race, and you're here, and this is all a product of hundreds of thousands of experiences having fun, and you get to now see your dream play out." Mm-hmm. And going to that big race in 2009 where like NBC was painting me as this villain with the top hat and this mustache that you sort of you sort of twist at the ends. You
always need your hero and your villain for a story.
Every story has a hero and a villain. You just
became the villain. I mean, you're already Iceman.
And I was Iceman. And because, Phelps is the All-American and, and NBC is an American production, guys, I'm an American too, but I wasn't representing the red, white, and blue, mm-hmm. which America recognizes.
How did you get tapped into representing Serbia?
Great question.
Right, you could have easily just been part of Team USA.
Yeah. As a kid, I sort of think about, the Greeks. Mm-hmm. The Greeks, like people, they know the Greeks to be like the loudest people in every restaurant, or they're always saying like, the word okay, it's actually Greek for okalaka. Like all of your words, like and there's a pride within that Greek, that Greek community, and it's not just the Greeks, it's every community. Every single group, they're proud of their tribe. And despite having left the country of Yugoslavia, my parents made sure to teach me the language.
And keep you proud of the country.
And keep me proud of the country by, again, going to church events, just sort of staying within that community.
Yeah.
And again, I was young and I was very, very good. I wasn't good enough for the US in the beginning, but it was like, well, let's represent our people. And that's how it started.
So then how does that go? You just call up the president, or is there like an Olympic committee?
There's an
come check us out.
There's an 800 number
go?
There's an 800 number for the president of Serbia.
Yeah. Press 1 for president. Yeah. Press 2 for vice president.
1-800 be Serbian.
Yeah.
No, I had the passport. Like I already had the right. So.
But how did they find you?
It was in the middle of the 90s when, just between the Balkan War and the bombings of Yugoslavia, I had gone there twice and I started sort of swimming. As a kid, you spend summers in the motherland.
So even though there was war, you could still fly back there.
It was between the war. It was between the Balkan War. Yeah. Well, peace times.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, I went there and, I was spending summers there, and it's just like, well, you might as well swim. And, I was this kid that, went there and was winning everything. And they're like, well, you enter the system, they know of you. And with more achievements, they start inviting you to different competitions. And then you're traveling abroad, and you're like, as a kid, you're like, oh my gosh, I get to travel, and you're staying in these these student dorms in the beginning, and you're grateful for everything that you get. And that's just sort of how it goes.
Yeah.
With everything, you start at the YMCA, summer league, and then you sort of join the next level team, and then you go to the club, and then from club you get recognized by university and so on. And the great thing about swimming and these performance sports are it's black and white. There's a time. If you achieve this time, then this.
Yeah.
And you start getting picked up for teams. So it's, sort of achieving great things very, very early on. I was able to take Serbian swimming from a very low level, which was this category 3 sport that had a budget of $50,000 per year.
Really?
For the whole country.
Wow.
Small country. The whole country.
It's not a lot of money.
No. And going to the, to category 1, status where it's 10 times that amount. So, when you start investing into something like that, all of a sudden we started having more training camps. We started having more people benefiting as a result of my results. And less than 10 years later, we had another world champion that literally grew up swimming in a very small pool, which is like a bathtub. Right? You don't need to have these, it's sort of that Ivan Drago, Rocky situation, whereas, Ivan was, had all this futuristic stuff. And here's Rocky, this Philly guy just chopping wood.
Yeah.
Right.
But make no mistake, if Rocky were training in Philly for that fight, he'd have the fancy stuff in that movie.
I don't know. I don't know what he would have been chopping in Philly, but he would have been he would have been lifting some stuff. No, but this journey, which is sports, it's just given me an ability to not only teach what I know, but also when you think something, you then realize holy cow, I don't know enough. And then because I love it, I was forced into this, not forced, I wanted to learn more. And I got into coaching. And that's
what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
It's your own business.
Yes. And I was head coaching and then I got into consulting, and what I do now is I realize a lot of coaches out there, they don't have a roadmap as to how to sort of begin coaching or how to write a workout. It's regardless of whether, I know you got friends in the MMA business, and you have them, you hear their stories. And it's well, it's not just so much as punching a bag or, just sparring.
There's more to it.
There's so much more to it. And as somebody who's been through all of that and has the perspective, but is also spend a whole lot of time thinking about every aspect of every level, whether it's technique or the mental side of things, or just sort of how to approach a situation, or you got a problem. I made it a business of mine to help people who are looking for that extra edge, but also people that they're stuck. And really, like, what I do today is I don't say I'm a coach, I'm a teacher. It's what I do. I teach. And if you want to get coached, I'll coach you. But a lot of people, you gotta be humble enough to ask for help. You'd be surprised. People, they don't always want help.
Or they're ashamed to ask for help.
I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I get it. You know, to ask for help, it's to show weakness, at least in their minds, because that's something that somebody taught them somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
You know, I am a product of performance coaching. I am a product of therapy. I am a product of everything out there. And when I look at my success, I don't even know where to start from the people that I have to thank. You know, and there was a time where I would thank people without looking in the eye. It's like, no. If I thank you, I'm gonna grab your hand and I'm gonna shake it for a half a second to a second longer than what you're used to. But I'm gonna make sure that you see me and that you know that I see you.
Yeah. Because there was a time where you just kind of brushed it off.
Yeah. And there was a long time when I just brushed off these small things where, you know, like, you're just incapable of showing gratitude. And my brother, just thank God for him, but like, he's somebody that I talk to all the time, and very often he just be like, let's play the gratitude game. 5 things. Right. And again, we'd just be bouncing one off of each other, and just no matter what, at the end of that, we're just happier.
Right.
It's all it took. Find someone you love and you trust, and just identify what you're grateful for and go from there.
But yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot
for sharing your story.
Yeah, I appreciate this, and this is fun.
How do people find you? You have the website.
How do they find me? They just look for the tall guy. No, they all you have to do is just go to swimwithmilo.com. You know, again, I don't just do swimming things, but like I said, I do mentorship, and my mentorship isn't just swimming, it's teaching people how to set goals.
Yeah, because you have the life coaching background.
And you know, and again, I teach people how to set goals. I teach them perspective. What's within your control? What's not within your control? Stop feeling like a victim. Like, my goal is to get you out of that victim mentality into this fighting mentality. You know, and again, it's just, you know, when you coach people, you know, there's different ways to go about it. Like, I can tell you what to do. If I tell you what, you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
But you're going to resent me.
Because you have to be willing.
You have to be willing.
Then you start questioning, is this guy no? Like, well,
it
goes back to what you said, there's a price to pay.
There is a price to pay. But again, like, through life coaching, what it essentially taught me was to listen. And I did talk a lot in the last hour and a half.
Yeah.
But, you know, it teaches you how to listen, and in listening, you know, you get down to where someone's at, and you go from there. Just because, you know, if you make someone do something, they're going to resent you for it. So you got to start from wherever it is that they're at, teach them how to set goals, and help them literally break down the perspectives that they got, that they're no good, that you know, nothing, that they're not valuable, or that they're not, you know, whatever. You know, a lot of what we think, like I said, I was incapable of gratitude because that was the operating system that I was given. I am the resetter of operating systems. I am the update.
Yep. Okay.
I'm going to give you a different perspective, and I'm going to break that code and show you. I'm going to help you show yourself that what you actually believe, you don't actually believe. And that is where we can actually begin to expand and to grow.
Yeah. Check out one of your programs then.
Let's just go for a drink.
Yeah. Let's do that. Well, thanks again for coming on the show, man.
Thank you for tuning into the show. If you found value in what our guests shared and what we share on the show. Please feel free to share with your friends and family. We'd love to see you back here. Thank you again. And you can find us on pretty much every social media channel, YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Step into the unscripted arena.